All right, everybody. So we are live for this new workshop here. So this new session. So today is September 10th, 2024, and welcome to our workshop. So I have our always special guest, Rodrigo here. I'll let Rodrigo introduce himself and then we'll get things started.
Hello, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here one more day. I'm Rodrigo. I'm Rodrigo Dimitro. I'm marketing director here at Peterworks, and it's always a pleasure to be here. And I'm looking forward to knowing more content with Jamil. Jamil, it's the star in our company, our product director. So yeah, let's talk more about.
Thank you. All right, Rodrigo. And Rodrigo, you have a fan. So Elena, I hope you pronounce your
Oh,
name correctly.
hey, Elena, how are you?
Good to have you here, Elena.
Yes.
So yeah, and I'll introduce myself as well. I'm Jamil. I'm director of products and operations at VitaWorks. Have been working here for the past 11 years, so a long, long time, long road. Yeah, and it's great to have you here. Have a great session today. And all right, so to get things started, our main topic for today is exception-based project management and process optimization. So I wrote some ideas so we can discuss, but most importantly, this session is for you. So I would love to hear your comments, questions, uh, anything that you want to share with us, please feel free to do so. So again, I brought something to the session, but at the same time, I would like to have your input throughout the session so we can make this fun and productive. All right. So if you have questions, please send our way through the chat and we'll do our best to respond in the session or maybe in a follow-up session. All right. Okay. So let me start. Already mentioned the subject, so I don't think that I need to share my screen right away. I'll do that in a moment. So let's talk about this exception-based project management. And when I say project management, I do think that it also relates to linguists, right? Linguists are not actually managing the project, but they're managing or manipulating the task that they receive from LSPs, right? And I think that this is not just for project manager or for LSPs. I think that everyone can benefit from this session. And to start, so let's talk about automation, right? I think this is the first topic that I would like to bring to the table. So I'll start talking about, of course, the platform. So, for instance, when we say like this exception-based project management, at least again, in my opinion, we are talking about okay, so what can we maybe automate and then have that process running automatically or semi-automatically, and then everything else we do as an exception based, right? So, for instance, code generation, right? So you receive a content that requires translation or review or any kind of service, and you have to prepare a code, right? So calculate the cost, usually per word, but could be per hour or any other metrics that you use. Okay, so uh, in most cases, you have to do that manually, right? So input all the costs and how much this costs, let him estimate that, and then we enter all these separate costs in a system usually, or maybe in a I don't know online document, and that's sent to the client. The client receives that, review the cost, and approve or not the code, right? So that's what happens most of the time. Also, and again, that's just my experience in general. Most of those files are simple, and of course, there are different use cases that are projects that are pretty complex. But most, at least again, in my opinion, and in my excuse me, in my experience, are simple files such as Word documents, PDF, XLIF, JSON files. So files that usually just requires translation, right? They don't require usually additional steps such as designing, such as pre or post engineering. So basically, when you receive those kind of files, you can think about, okay, so this is a standard, right? So the file is standard, the content don't require any other kind of, usually any other kind of services other than translation. So let's say that you estimate the cost based on word count, right? So you can have the platform doing that for you, right? And then, okay, but from time to time, I receive a Word document that has images, that has something else in it, and that would require additional service. All right. So that's what we were talking about in terms of exception management, right? So 99%, for example, of your projects are kind of similar. So you can automate this process of code generation. And there's maybe 1%, maybe 3% of those projects that require some human touch, right? So get to do right. And that applies to everything, right? Maybe to generate payables for payment for to pay the linguist, receivables to receive the money from your clients. What else? Creation of projects from connectors, maybe allocating tasks or placing the tasks to the translator. So all those, again, in my experience and also based on the technology we have at our disposal, can be fully or partially automated, right? It also does not need to be or nothing, right? So you can automate part of those processes, and then you can let some part of those processes manual because I don't know, there's maybe sensitive content, maybe there's something else involved that requires a human attention. All right. So let me pause here for a quick second. And I'd like to ask a question to Rodrigo, but before Rodrigo asking you a question, that I love to ask questions that you are not prepared for. I mean, I'm always prepared for any questions that I have, but that you were not expecting. But before doing that, I would like to ask a question to our audience. So you, as project managers, as linguists, uh, in the day-to-day job that you perform, that can be anything, right? So translating content, reviewing content, creating codes, placing jobs to linguists, uh, anything, right? So are there any uh, tools or any features that you believe that could be really helpful for you, like for to you to perform better or maybe faster than we currently do? So if so, can you please share with us these ideas or these thoughts about, okay, so for instance, I could really benefit from a linguist perspective, right? I can really benefit from a tool that helps me to correct text automatically. So I don't have to do that manual work and go from segment to segment and fixing text, right? So that's just an example. For project manager, there's this example that I just mentioned, right? Code automation. And again, we have that in the platform, but maybe you are not subscribing yet and you've not started your trial yet. So I would like to hear from you about that because then when I share my screen, maybe I can tackle those along the way during the session, right? So, and before we go into Elena questions, Rodrigo, now your moment. So, a question for you. So, when it comes to marketing, Rodrigo, and again, it's completely different area, right? So, how do are there any best practices in terms of like automation, exception-based management? So how do you usually see that? Like you try to automate as much as possible. How that does in general does that work when it comes to marketing? Just so you can share a little bit of your experience with the audience as well.
Well, that's pretty cool. I would say we have so many approaches in marketing. For example, well, when we use a marketing platform, for example, like HubSpot or Salesforce, a wall-in-one marketing platform where it's supposed to manage basically almost everything in marketing, like social media marketing, advertisement. We
Mhm.
tend to use automation inside of these platforms. For example, when we schedule our webinar, we have this StreamYard, and in StreamYard basically we have a landing page that StreamYard already created. I don't need to create a new page, so they have a lot of small features and capabilities that allows marketing to not to reinvent you know they will, because in marketing we always have form. We always have one email that we send right off to confirm. So basically, like this platform, the StreamYard platform, I could say it's a kind of automation because we don't need to create every asset in marketing. We don't need to create the form. We don't need to create the email to confirm. We don't need uh, 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 to create all the reminders because the platform already sent. So it's pretty cool, right? Because if I had to create all this workshop process, it would be a lot of work, and probably we would need to run maybe one.
Rodriguez.
Yes, yes, it's insane the number of assets that it's necessary to create all these workshops. And with StreamYard, it's very cool. And another thing that I would like to bring up here today, because we had a chance to attend at a gala in Valencia, and one of the session was about how to automate uh, how to uh, create a code automation using ChatGPT, and
Okay.
basically the process was interesting because it's a lot of copy and paste, putting your client's project into GPT and calculating the number of words, and then calculating your price and all these steps, copy here, paste there. And many people, they were like astonished, like, wow, this is amazing, how we can create all this automation using ChatGPT. But then I asked, oh, but do you know BeerWorks, we have one way that you don't need to copy and paste and do all this code automation without that. So yeah, just bringing up that because sometimes we see so many potential using ChatGPT, but when we have to scale our processes, when we have to scale up and do more codes and do more stuff, that is definitely is not the best case scenario, right? You have to
Definitely.
have somehow some platform behind it that can manage all these back and forth among documents.
Yeah.
I don't know
So I think
if I answer
Mhm.
your question, but yeah.
It does. It does. And I think that is also kind of related to Elena questions. But before digging into that question, especially the one from Google Docs, I think that the main point when it comes, so GPT is amazing, right? So it can do a lot of things that you could not even imagine like a few years back, right? And so, but there is like this all these layers of uh, building these prompts that we're going to generate the output that you're expecting. So that's one thing. And also, there's a lot of manual work involved for like get a quotation, right? So you could potentially just drag and drop a file in VideoWorks and have that code ready for you in a few seconds. In GPT, you have to give a lot of information and copy and paste to get to that point. Not to mention data security and confidentiality, right? So if you have your free account in GPT and copy and paste your code in there, is getting used for retraining the engine, of course. So that's one thing to keep in mind as well. If you ever try to do that, again, it is amazing, but you have to take that into account as well because confidentiality is a big deal, a really, really big deal for
Yes.
for every company, right? Okay, so now finally, let me respond to Alena's question. So, and by the way, thank you, Elena, for asking these questions. And again, if anyone else has questions or comments, Rodrigo asked a question about automation tools. If you use any automation tools, or if you believe that you could benefit from an automation feature in the current platform that you use to maybe translate content or to manage content, please send in the chat as well. That's we can talk more about that. All right, so I'm going to respond first the first item. So Elena said, I'm using neural machine translation to translate my course contents. Does that count? Yes, it does count, especially because you are doing a lot of manual work. So Elena, do you mind like sharing with us a little bit more about like how is this process, big high level? I mean, you are using this neural machine translation, you get this content populated right in the translated file, and then you or someone else are going to accessing that file, doing a review and adjustments to it until it gets ready to be delivered, or is it something else? I just want to understand like a little bit more about this manual piece that you mentioned, right? I understand that you are populating the content with neural machine translation, but then making adjustments to it. Is that it, or is something different? Um, and then, in the meantime, while you give time for Alina to respond to my question, integration with Google Docs. That's a great point. Let me share my screen here so we can talk about that. Give me just a quick second. All right, so this is the screen that I want. Alrighty, so I hope you all can see it. So,
Yeah.
uh, speaking of Google Google Docs. Google Docs is one of the connectors that we'll be building early 2025. So that's part of our roadmap. But the point that I want to make about connectors is how we design our connectors. So we have connectors, we also have plugins in here in the platform. And I just wanted to briefly speak about that, right? So we have Contentful, Eloqua, Figma, GitHub, Marketo, Pendo, Phrase, WordPress, Adobe AM, that's not in the UI, but we also have available, and a few others. And the way that we work, or at least the way that we designed the connectors to work, is to allow you to either automate the process or to manually act or use those. So I can give you an example. So we have this GitHub connector, right? And then you have a content that is an GitHub repository that requires translation. Any kind of content could be like a web application, can be an internal material that requires translation. So any kind of material that's available in your GitHub repository. There are different ways you can use that. So one, again, as I mentioned, you could manually create a project. So you create the configurations in the platform that are going to point out to your repository in GitHub. And then you create a project from here. You select where you want to create this project, the contact person, you give a name to it, which workflows are going to be available, translation, review, translation review, in-country review, and so on. And then you create a project in the platform, right? So that's one way to create projects using connectors. But the way that we design it and the way that we think that it works more effectively is using what you call a scheduler, right? So the scheduler means that we build a scheduler that basically what it does is to so you set um, a time frame and you set when you want the scheduler to check this repository, or it could be a web page if you're talking about WordPress, or to an article if you're talking about Pendo. So you're going to check that repository, that folder with where the content is available to see if there are new content or changed content. So let's use this example that I about like this GitHub, right? So we have an XML file in there in GitHub. All right. So and then you translated this file this week. You delivered it back. You have the translated version available in GitHub. Now, next week, that file gets updated, right? Or maybe more content was added, maybe content was removed or changed. So if the scheduler is activated and you set the scheduler to run, for instance, every Tuesdays and every Fridays, on Tuesdays and Fridays, the scheduler is going to check that repository. If there are changes or new content available, is going to pull the content, create a project for you. All this that I did here are going to happen automatically, right? That's going to generate a project here for you. The costs are going to be also calculated automatically, and the code will be ready automatically, fully automated, right? And if you have also, not going to deep into that, but if you also have the coach alt test placement available, that could potentially already make the content available for the translators that are also legible for taking that translation for those languages. So virtually you can have this entire process from pulling content until the completion of the translation and review and all the steps that are involved automated. And then you just have to worry about, okay, so do I need to perform any final checks before delivering my translated content back into GitHub or WordPress or any Google Docs, for instance? So yeah, I just wanted to share
It,
with you a little bit
it's
more about
interesting.
like
It's
this.
very
Uh-huh.
interesting. Yeah, yeah, it's very
Yeah.
interesting because I remember the first time when I had to translate a website. So my process, I remember, I had to first select all my website content first, selecting manually with my mouse and going there and selecting all the content, copying and pasting into our Microsoft Word, and then after collecting all our 30 pages, it's our website. The first website that I translated was a small website just with
Hmm.
30 pages. For example, BureauWorks website today, we have more than 4,000 pages today. So, and
Yeah.
then
A
after
lot.
that, I had to send this material to someone to translate and get back and copy again and paste again into our WordPress. So,
Yeah.
and now what you are saying is instead of me having to copy all my website content and paste it into Microsoft Word, so BureauWorks is going directly there, extracting and doing all the process automatically, right?
Yes. That's it. That's exactly it. So our website is a good example. So if you had this activated, this scheduler in our website, so every new article, every new blog, everything that you created in there, and also Lena just mentioned WordPress, also WordPress, if you have a new web page or change the web page within WordPress, is going to, you have the scheduler activated. Again, that's optional, right? Not a requirement. If the scheduler is activated to run every week or every day, it could be as well, if you have like a lot of content being updated every single day, you can have all this process of creating the project automated. And again, you can go even deeper than that. Even the task, offering the task to linguists can happen automatically. The conclusion of the translation and review, all these translation workflows can happen automatically. So again, it's, as I mentioned, it's not all or nothing, right? We can decide. So okay, we don't want to automate. We don't want to run a scheduler because of. I also saw clients that have use cases like that. For instance, we make most weeks we make just small adjustments to our web page, for example, and I don't want a project with, I don't know, 100 new words to be translated, sent for translation. I want to wait until we have a good amount of content, like 1,000 words, right, or several pages that have changed, and to create a project in the platform. All right, so we can set to every 3 weeks, or if that is not predictable, you can do that manually as well, right? So we can decide the level of automation that we want to put in this process. And just to speak a little bit about, before going back to the DeepL question and neural machine translation, let me just mention the WordPress. The WordPress works similarly. It is the same concept, and of course, that's using GitHub. So we can either set the scheduler to pull this content automatically and create the project for you in the platform, checking again for new or changed content, or you can do that manually and create a project, I don't know, whenever you feel that's a good time to create that project and start the localization of the content for those WordPress pages. And now this other question about, and thank you for responding, Lina, giving us a little bit more info about that. So you're using FreeDTL, you send the content for revision, the translator, the linguist reviewing the content, and then you're copy and paste the content manually back into Google Translate, so you can you're basically back translating the content, right, using Google Translate, so you can check if the meaning is kept after this revision, right? That's a lot of manual steps, and I don't know, Alina, if you already started your free trial in the platform, but in a use case like this, I can recommend a few things for you. But before doing that, so let me use this. I'm going to open, I don't know, maybe I don't speak German, but let me open this German file here. All right, so it's partially translated. So there are several things that we potentially could improve in this process.
Yeah, she said she's is pasting into Google Classroom instead of Google
Oh,
Translate.
okay. I
Yeah.
got you. I saw Classroom, and I thought that. Okay, now it's clear. Perfect. All right, so it's not the back translation. So there are, in my opinion, several things that could be improved in this process. So the first thing that I think that could really benefit your use case is that, based on what you described, there's no, you're not, you don't have a way to keep this knowledge, right? So the linguist receiving a Word document or a document, translated and delivering back to you. So then next time there's a Word document or another document that's similar to that one, how you can make sure that the content is, the translation is standardized accordingly to the previous translation as well, right? And also how we can leverage the previous translation that have been done for the same document since it is similar, right? Maybe it's just an updated document. So then that's the first concept, the translation memory, right? So the translation memory, and I don't know if you're familiar with that. but if not, I can also talk more about it. But the translation memory will ensure several things, but two, the most important are that your translation is always standardized, right? So if you have this, I have this document here. So this is was extractable from our website, so beerworks.com, and I'm translating this, right? So I translate this week, and then uh, next week Rodrigo makes some change to our website, right? So Rodrigo think, okay, now let's change this completely. I don't like this anymore. Let's change all this. And Rodrigo changed a lot the copy, but parts of the copy are the same. All right. I have this translation stored in my translation memory, so I can leverage that, right? So that would do two things. So first, reduce the costs, because if I already have this content stored and it's the same, I don't need to translate this again, right? So these segments that are from 1 until 8 are locked because they have been previously translated. They're stored in my translation memory. So the linguists don't have to work on that. So they're not going to charge for that, of course, as well, right? Because they don't have to touch on those. Also, that this way I can ensure that the translation is standardized, right? I don't know if you always work with the same linguist, Lena, but again, at least in my experience, it's pretty common that sometimes people are not available or take a week off or something. You don't have to send the content to someone else, right? And then how do you guarantee that I'm translating the same way that the previous person was translating, right? So translation memory also helps to keep the translation standardized, even if you change linguists or the same person, right? Maybe in a given day you translate a word in a given way, and next week you translate different. Not again the same in meaning in the end, but the translation is different, right? That could potentially generate a problem. The other thing is how you, Elena, want this to be translated, right? So how this, so for instance, Beerworks should not be translated. So I'm teaching the linguist through my glossary that this should not be translated, and it could be different. I could have a different word. Maybe let me see if I have another one. I don't think that I have for German, but I could potentially say, okay, so engine, it should be kept an engine in German. This should not be translated, and this already seems to be the case here, right? But now I'm saying that. So the linguist next time that translating this, he or she knows that engine should be kept as engine. It should not be translated. So no translators that are translating this content should be touching this. And let's say no, but the translator did not follow the terminology, right? The translator by mistake maybe just deleted this or used it or translate this because he or she thought that it was better to translate it. Whenever the linguist tries to confirm the segment, he or she is going to be alerted about that, right? There's a mismatch here in the glossary. You're not following the glossary, basically, and then he or she can go back and fix that, right? So that's the second piece of the glossary. So how this content should be translated. So what are the key terms or relevant terms that should not be changed? And then of course there's also we also have DeepL here, by the way. So that's included in our subscription. So we offer a machine translation engine as part of the subscription. So there is no additional payment for that. But most importantly, we have this context sensitive translation. You maybe already have heard about that, Alina, and everyone in the room as well. And I was just going to translation memory and machine translation and glossary because all that together is what makes the context sensitive so powerful, right? Because the context sensitive translation, by the way, this was translated. So as you can see, there's this CS here on the right hand side. So this was populated by context sensitive. So context sensitive learned is learning, right? It's always learning on the fly. It's learning from in this segment, for example, from my machine translation, from my glossary. So BuildWorks should be kept BuildWorks as BuildWorks. And if I also had a translation memory entry here, the translation memory was also going to teach GPT uh, how this was supposed to be, how this should be translated, right? And then GPT will take all that into consideration and propose to the linguist a translation that's most likely good for that, based on all the context provided for to be used in that particular segment, right? So context sensitive because it learns and it proposes something based on the context, right? And just before I pause here, um, when I say context, I mentioned machine translation, glossary, translation memory, but there's much more than that. So we also provide to this the context sense to the engine the previous segments, next segments. So we try to make sure that the engine will have as much information as possible, relevant information, to help this engine to propose a translation that makes sense for this particular segment, right? And then if I change my glossary, if I store a different translation in my translation memory, that's different from probably the one that I have right now, right? Next time that I try to translate this a similar segment to this one, the engine will already know that okay, I don't want this to be translated this way. I want to translate it that way because that was is what I taught to the engine. All right. So let me pause here for a second after speaking for 1 hour here straight. And Rodrigo, any questions about all this, just to make sure that I'm being clear about all these benefits. And if you you see that, because I think that in the beginning you also had to do like some copy and paste, right? It didn't be the works, right? To
Hmm.
get things right. And how
Yes.
is your experience with that?
Yeah, yeah, I think translation when we think about web web translation, because basically the way how we internet and website we are today, it's a never ending job. You are always creating new content or changing your copy, change your homepage content, and sometimes we have a pricing page with just one item, one line. You have to change it, and you have to replicate this change in more than 5, 10, or 20 languages. How do you manage? So without tech, it's almost impossible. Even if you are, you know, the most organized people in the world, you're gonna have some challenges in order to manage everything. You need to have somehow a platform or a tech system that you can check it out. If no, you change it just these words, so we are automatically getting these sentences. So, and what I like and what I use a lot, it's the web preview. The web preview, I use a lot this web preview because it allows me to see mainly in some languages. For example, in German, when we have a short sentence in English, but in German it's so long, and it breaks the word, or it breaks our button, our button text. So I like to use also one filter that we have, that we can filter a certain width, and allows me to find all our buttons, our HTML, our web buttons that usually they tend to break in mobile mainly. So yeah, because now it's not more about just put content online. It's how to fix our contents in so many different sizes and screens, and
Yes,
and translation, it's all into that.
yes, exactly, exactly. And Alina, that's good. That's good that you're trying. And if you have these questions already, you can send our way. We'll do our best to try to respond in this session. if that's not possible, we can certainly address that right after the session or in the follow-up session as well. But that you touched on an important point, Rodrigo, and I just opened the web preview here. And again, as I mentioned, so this is a Word document, but this was extracted from our website, so Beetleworks.com. So what's happening here is that I have my translations right in this document in German, and we are doing a best attempt to match the translation in real time what we have in our website, right? So the linguist can see that in context. And I mentioned context sensitive, but other than the context sensitive, it's also important for the linguist to have more context, right? Because as you mentioned, so let's use, I don't know if that's the case for Alina, but let's say that Alina has this page in WordPress that she's exporting that have generate this Google Doc and then send the translator. Does this translator will have access or visibility on the web page? Yes or no? Maybe she or she does, but maybe after the translation, right? And that can generate some problems, maybe, right? So as Rodrigo mentioned, so German, I don't know, I don't speak German, but I worked a lot with this German, managing German translations, and I can see that most of the time German translation is Portuguese, which is my mother tongue as well, is longer than the English sentences in general. So chances are the text will be much longer if you don't pay attention to the length of the terms that you're using. And then that's not a problem if you don't have any images or anything, right? If you don't have text boxes. But if you do have that, that can be a problem, right? To have a PowerPoint, to have a website like this. So that's something that really helps linguists doing the translation or revision of the content, so they know, okay, so I cannot use this term because this is too long. This will make the sentence too long. So I can say the exact same thing, use a shorter term here, and that will fit better in our website. So no, that's not possible. Maybe you have to change the layout in the website. Yes, that's usually the last option, right? So we don't want to do it, but that's important for a translator as well to have this kind of visibility on the context. And before we had this web preview, by the way, you don't have just web preview, have a video preview, document preview, code preview. That's for HTML, JSON, SRT files, and other formats. We had the linguists, they needed to have this kind of visibility, but they only could have that afterwards, after the translation was done. So I can use, for instance, Rodrigo example. So let's imagine that we don't have that, right? Rodrigo sent this for translation. Our translator do the best work as possible in the platform, deliver good quality translation to Rodrigo. But when Rodrigo uploads the translation back to our website, it is too long, right? So, and then what Rodrigo do? Rodrigo will send back to the translator. You say, okay, so you have to short your translation, and or Rodrigo can adjust our website, right? Layout. That's usually, again, not what we want, right? And now Rodrigo can just send the file to the linguist because Rodrigo knows that linguists will not only do the best translation as possible, but will know exactly how this would look like in our website. So we remove a layer, additional layer of validation of the content by having this, by giving the more context and this preview to linguists. So that's usually really helpful when you are translating, especially websites and content that have images, PowerPoints, and maybe Word documents that also have images and etc. All right. Anyone also has any other automations that could be beneficial for you that would like to bring to the session? I know that we have translators in the room as well. So I can give it again. I just gave you an example in the beginning. So tag fixing. By the way, I think that this is a Word document, a simple Word document. We don't have any tags, but just so you know if you're not testing the platform yet, we have this augmented actions, which is powered by GPT, and it has this fixed tags in here, right? So you can click on it. If there are mismatches in terms of tags, that's going to be automatically fixed by when you do that, right? And one of the improvements that we are going to working on the next few months is to allow this to be run in the entire document. So you have this fixed tag in the entire document, right? That's one of the things that will be work. But again, that's just one example that something that, at least in my opinion, could be beneficial for translator. But I would like to hear from you all that you're in the room if you have any other suggestions or any pain points that you're currently facing that you understand that could be really helpful for you. And all right, so Rodrigo ask a question.
No, I was
Oh, okay,
inviting
okay, yeah, I
Alena
understand.
to participate in our session here, and she could, talk
Yes,
about her challenges, and yeah.
yes, that's a good. I don't know if you're up to it. We're happy to talk about more about this in depth with you. And yeah, all right. So while we give some time to, oh, Elena's here. All right, we'll put Elena. There we go.
How's it going?
Elena, good, and you?
I'm doing very well, thank you.
Thank you for being here with us. All right, Elena. So share with us the questions you have. I mean, about the functioning of AI. I would love to hear, and I'll do my best to try to respond all those questions you have about it.
Well, I don't want to get too advanced because I taught, I teach computer assisted translation tools, and I also work with ASTM F43. So we're an international standards organization that has things
Okay.
like typologies of error types and things like that. So when I started looking at the results that are coming out of your automatic translation, it's amazing. Like the smells, I'm super curious. What are all the possible smells that there are? Like, do you have a typology of that? But I don't know if that's useful for this conversation. I would
It
say for
is.
this, do you think it is useful for this
It,
conversation?
it is. It is definitely useful, and that's a great question. And it's funny because we we are still learning how powerful it is. So Rodrigo can speak about that. So we had like we implemented, and there are a lot of prompts that we put together, but sometimes these translations now pick up some things that uh, we do not even think about, right? So we try not we of course we give some a lot of parameters to GPT about what we are expecting in terms of results, what has to be checked, but we try not to limit it. So we allow GPT to be kind of creative when it comes to sharing this with us. And we always sometimes now we know more about those, but we don't have all those mapped out just because sometimes, and also because GPT is evolving, right? So every new version, every few months, is getting better and better, and always something new, right? And that's, I mean, I'm saying that in of course in a good way. So and but yeah, I can certainly write an article about that and share with you all the ones that we saw see the most, right? But that's always improving. So that's the good thing about it. And not only these mouse, the only thing that the other thing that we mentioned about the results when it comes to translation, and that's a concept that's important for us, and I always try to uh, talk about that, is it is learning, right? And I know that especially maybe for translators or for everyone, GPT or AI in general can be scary sometimes, right? And one thing that's important, the way that we implement it is not to think about, okay, AI is going to do the job and you upload the file, run AI, and that's it, right? AI is guiding and trying to provide the translators a translation feed that's better than the machine translation alone, translation memory alone, glossary alone. So it makes all that together and try to post something that's better. And the cool thing and the most important piece to me is that it's learning, right? And it's learning from you, Elena. It's learning from the linguist. So the linguist making changes to the segments are improving because that's storing in the translation memory. You receive the content and say, this is a term that should not be translated, or should be translated in a different way. And then you either share this feedback with the linguist, that's of course important, or you can go in there in the platform and say, okay, so text should be text, should not be translated. So GPT, we will learn from that, right? So the very next sentence, maybe the next segment that has tag in it, you already know, okay, Alina don't want me to use tech and translate tech anymore, right? So it's learning on the fly. And all right, so do you have any specific questions about the functioning of GPT, or maybe you want to try it a bit more? I just wanted to give you like a quick overview about all this.
Yeah, I'm starting to collect screenshots too that I plan to share with your team. I got to meet Rodrigo and Gabrielle at SlaterCon last week, and Gabrielle mentioned that I could potentially teach this in my CAT class. And so
that's amazing.
Whenever I'm going to teach something, I really want to know the system. So I do sort of a real deep dive into what's happening with the system. And so for me, it will be interesting to see what's designed by your team and what's just happening automatically by the AI. For example, there's the categorization of errors, where what I'm seeing for the options for categorization of changes, that is, preferential improves fluency, does not improve fluency, incorrect translation. Are those designed by your team, or is that ChatGPT that's designed that?
Great question. So no, that was designed by our team, but that's flexible. So when it comes to categorization, so usually each company has its own, right? And we, in that scenario, we don't leave it too open, because then we can have everything, right? And then how can you compare the quality of the translation? So every single time there is a different category being used. So for that in particular, that is one of those things that where we try to define these categories we have, but that's flexible. So the ones that you saw are standard in the platform, but that can be changed as well. So some clients don't have like preferential change, or don't have preferential do not impact fluency and so on. So that's is defined in the platform.
That's great, because those would be precisely the things that I'd be wanting to teach. I've done a lot of work with ASTM in their MQM typology of translation errors. We've done a lot of studies seeing how, if translators apply error types consistently and people don't apply it consistently. If you don't teach them what it means, they have no idea. They're just, this is this, that is that. And so then all of this great data you're trying to collect, it's not actionable anymore. And so that's great. That those would be the very things that I would be wanting to teach about the tool, is just, how to correctly categorize things.
Sure. Yeah, definitely. And just to share with everyone here what we're talking about, this categorization. So that appears on the screen whenever the reviewer make a change to a sentence or to a word or to anything in a translation. So they are prompted to categorize those changes. So in this by design, we have those, right? Terminology, grammar, fluency, etc. But as I mentioned, we could potentially create new ones. If that's not what you use in your use case, you can create new ones, and that's the ones that are going to be used and prompted to the translators to select. And of course, the whole idea here about around this is teach people, right? So we in the end, the content has to be good, the quality should be up to standards and all that. Of course, that's the end goal. But that if you have that, but the linguists that have a lot of content change do not is not learning from that. Next time you're going to have the same amount of work fixing things, right? The same things. So we want to teach people to get how this should be translated and create this discussion as well, which is also possible through the quality feature we have. So then we have constant translation across different languages, and so on. All right, perfect. And any other questions, Alina? I think I have room for one more, maybe.
If you have room for one more, it was a really cool use case where I had a reference to the American Translators Association, and the translation smells told me the most frequent translation of American Translators Association it told me that it should be, the system states that the official translation is Asociación de Traductores de América. And I wonder, how did it get to that official translation? Because I've researched that. As a terminologist, I've researched what is the correct translation of American Translators Association, and I've seen so much variation. And so I was curious, are the smells arriving at that official translation just because of the volume of content that the AI is able to analyze way more than I can as a human practitioner? Or do you have an idea of what might be happening there?
That's an amazing question. And so the first thing, I'll have to research to be sure, but I never saw once the AI giving like an official translation, not knowing that was actually official. So I believe that what you said is that by having access and being able to search across like multiple and thousands, millions of pages instantly is what allowed AI to bring that result. But now, in respect to the translation in particular, I have to research about that because I did not know about that as well, right? So, but again, and in my experience, I never saw AI prompting, okay, so this is a official translation and not knowing about that. But we also have to keep in mind that we are teaching AI, right? So that could be wrong. I mean, again, if it seems to be official, I don't think it is, but that's also important to always take into consideration. That's one of the things that I mentioned that's also important for us as industry to understand that AI is not replacing humans, right? So again, you are unsure about that, and the linguist will also be unsure about that. So the linguist also do his own research around that subject to then either accept this suggestion for AI or to propose something else, right? So AI is just a tool. It's a powerful tool, but it's a tool that's helping them to try to propose the best translation.
I'm grabbing screenshots that I'm going to share with your team of all of this stuff that I find just interesting and I have questions about. Thank you so much for these training opportunities, and it's a really cool. I was like flabbergasted when I saw the demo of it and what it can do. It's a really powerful system.
Amazing. That's great. And thank you for participating here, Elena. Thank you for the questions. And we've been in touch. And again, any questions you have or any you find along the way, please send our way. And we have these sessions every week. So we change the subjects, but we have the session every week. So hope to see you again and follow-up sessions as well.
And also, everyone, Elena, she has an online training, right, Elena? You were mentioning last week at LaterCon. So if you would like to just put in the chat your link, so feel free to share your website. And Elena, she's also one of the professors at Middlebury. So it's a pleasure to have you here.
Very cool. Very cool. Very cool. And by the way, Alina, oh, no, never mind. So I don't know if you're going to be at the Lockwood, but we'll be there in October. No? Okay, no problem. But I hope to meet you in person in the near future. Thank you, Alina, for participating. And again, if you feel free to put in the chat the website, the link if you would like. And for everyone in the room, thank you so much as well for participating in the session. I hope you learned something. Again, I always learn from you, from Rodrigo, from Alina today. And the sessions are made for you. So next time we will have a different subject. But again, the main thing for us here is to make sure that we're addressing questions and make a productive session. So even if your questions are not directly related to the subject, please join the session, ask the questions in the chat, and we'll do our best to respond to them. And Alina, just send the link in the chat. Thank you, Alina. And yeah, we are going to wrap up this. Again, everyone, thank you so much for being here. Thank you, Alina, again, not only for being here, but for also joining the conversation with me, Rodrigo. And if anyone else is also interested in joining the conversation with me, Rodrigo, please send a message in the chat in the next session. We'll be glad to put you on the spotlight as well. All right? Thanks so much, everyone. Take care. Have a great rest.
Thank you, Elena. Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.